by Simiu Werunga, who's a security expert and analyst. Simiu, since morning we have tried to find our angles on what was happening and why it was happening of that sense. You've seen Leila Mohammed there talking to us briefly about the courage, the cottage, and the significance of the 5 stars and that sort of thing. Walk us through what does a state funeral exactly look like and why it is conducted in this sense, and why is the military taking sort of charge and not any other sort of security formation?
Thank you, James. I've not seen you for a while, but what is happening today, the military is bearing its own. Although the late president was the president of the Republic of Kenya, but he was the commander-in-chief. Now, essentially, the commander-in-chief is not necessarily, in modern democracies, a commander-in-chief is not necessarily in charge of the police or other armed services. It's basically the person who gives instructions and orders to the country's military. But in our African context, the commander-in-chief will always be in charge of all armed services. And therefore, the military is doing, because although he was not officially a field marshal, because that's a 5-star general, essentially they give him that honor because he was in charge of them. He was basically the head of the Defense Council, and everything that is done within a state structure to bury either a living president or a former president is always given that responsibility to the military, because at one time he was their boss for some time. Now, there's a difference between burying a president who passed on after leaving office, and there's a difference in burying a president who dies while in office. So all those things are different, but now you realize that the persons who are going to be the pallbearers are of the rank of a colonel. The person in charge of that pallbearer is a brigadier general. If, for example, it was a head of state dying while in office, you will see that one being done by brigadiers and above. And that's just giving them an honor, and because it's a person who was in charge of our country, was their commander-in-chief, it becomes a state funeral, and the military takes over all the functions, the preparations, the planning, so that the government will just follow what the military has advised. While we know we have a burial committee, I don't know if they're calling it a burial committee or something, but essentially the answer is just to discuss and then leave the rest to the military, so that they take charge of the one of their own. And this is the highest honor you can give to either a retired president or a president who dies while in office, to take him for burial. So that is the significance of what you are seeing here. Anything that touches on state, most of the times, and it involves a head of state or a retired head of state, is always given to the military, I think for issues of precision and also the fact that he was their commander-in-chief.